only fits so much into this presentation. So I hope you enjoy what you do here. There will be a spot for questions at the end if you felt there was something left off. So let's get into it. The Appalachian Trail. So what is it? Appalachian Trail is the largest hiking-only trail in North America. It starts at Springer Mountain in Georgia and goes all the way to Katahdin in central Maine. I don't like this map because it says Mount Katahdin, and Katahdin means Great Mountain in the Penobscot, I believe, native language, but we'll forgive this map for that. Just a little bit of a back history on it. Benton MacKay, my apologies, is thought to have created the original idea for the trail. His thought would be it would be a great place for people, especially back in the 1920s, that they'd be able to move between the states more easily, maybe live communally out on the trail. And while that's not what became of it, the outdoorsmen and the backpackers of all these states thought that was a great idea, and those groups picked it up and worked together. And so by 1937, the trail in its first iteration was completed. It had a different southern terminus, it was a little bit shorter. The trail grows a little bit every year as they reroute around problem areas or close a reroute because they fixed a problem area, such as that. When I hiked, it was 2,198.4 miles. That's just locked in my head forever. As you see here, that's a photo of Earl Shaver. He was the first publicized thru hiker. There have been some people who've come out who've made claims that other people did it first, but he's the big superstar of thru hiking that made people go, oh, I won't die if I do this? So credit to him for at least starting this all off. So we're just gonna dive right in to, you've already decided that you want to thru hike the trail. There's a lot of reasons why you'd want to do it. Maybe because you just got out of a relationship, or because you just got into a relationship, or because you have too much money, or because you don't have enough money. Every single reason, the main thing that draws people together is they just feel they have to, or need to, or they just want to. So once we got into that point, we have to figure out how you're going to approach this. So length of time is easy. If it's within a calendar year, 365 days, it's a thru hike. If it's more than that, it's a section hike. That's pretty straightforward. A thru hike on average for those who start at one end, goes to the other, takes between 5 to 7 months of hiking. That includes days off, that includes trips back home for a wedding, that includes trips for scheduled medical treatments like I received. But yeah, 6 months is about the average time you're out walking in the woods. This is from a volunteer survey of about 450 hikers who did the trail by year 2023. And it shows those who started. In blue is how they started the trail, and in that orange is what they spent the majority of the trail in. So you'll see this almost 70% of people started as solo hikers, which is what I did. And you'll see that up to 51% ended the trail saying they spent the majority with friends they made on the trail, which I think is a lovely notion and speaks to how much of a community is built out there. Because no matter what happens, you come across a stinky person and go, you chose to live 6 months in the woods? And they go, I chose to live 6 months in the woods. We're friends now. Other fun things I love about this is you'll note, while it is still within 1%, for significant other, there's a greater majority of those who ended the hike with a significant other than those who started the hike with a significant other. And you'll also note that for those who started with a friend from before the hike, with a family member, or with a dog, for each of those categories, there was a 50% drop off of those who spent the majority with that person or dog. Makes sense? The more people you have in the group, that's more people who can get injured or have a family emergency where they have to go home. And then the other big thing is you have to figure out how you're gonna eat this elephant. So there's two directions. There's two main directions people do: northbound or NOVO, southbound or SOVO. And so northbound is the most popular route. It goes from Springer Mountain down in Georgia. Well, that's a cool guy. And then it goes all the way up to Katahdin in Maine. The reason it's the most popular way of doing this is because While Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee are not the easiest sections of the trail, Maine and New Hampshire are brutal. So they recommend you don't start there unless you know what you're doing or if you've done something like this before. Other thing of note while I'm thinking about it, there's no permit to hike the trail. You can just go do it. They like it if you report into the body that oversees it, but you don't have to. Anyway, so there's the two main ones, and then you're like flip-flop, yo-yos, those are just things you buy at a store. Au contraire. So flip-flop is where you try to avoid the crowds of people, especially northbound, and you start somewhere in the middle. The most popular spot to start is Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, because that is where the headquarters for the governing body of the trail is, the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. And so you can go, for those who care about registering their hike, get your hike registered and start from there. So in that case, you'd, there we go, Harper's Ferry, roughly the middle point. You go from there, you hike up to Katahdin, and then via car or plane, you make your way back to Harper's Ferry, and then hike back down to the south, or any other iteration of that. Start in the middle, go south, start in the south, go to the middle, go to north. You get the picture. The other thing it does is that it alleviates pressure on the trail. There's a lot of power of volunteers that goes into maintaining trails, especially after storms or for people who aren't as courteous to the resources out there. And so when you have about, I'd say on average, 2,500 to 3,000 northbound hikers attempted every year, that puts a lot of pressure all at once on it. So by flip-flopping, you are not in the bubble of hikers and you're not abusing that trail that's already being mangled up. And then yo-yo is just nonsense. You break it up into sections and you accomplish the sections in one direction, but in the section itself, you hike in the opposite direction. I met one gentleman, he did the entire trail. He did his sections northbound, he hiked them southbound. So what he would do is, he'd do the section and he would hike south to a bicycle that he had left for him. His sections were 100 miles of trail, just to be clear. So he'd hike multiple days south. He would bike back up to where he started that section to his car. He'd leave his bike there, he'd take his car back up to the next section, hike back down to his bike back up to his car, all the way yo-yoing up the trail. His reasoning for that was that he had severe dietary restrictions, and so he could leave food that he knew was safe for him to eat in his car, and so whenever he would resupply, he'd take his car, go to wherever he needed to get specific foods, bring it back, and that way he could do that without just eating ramen and Slim Jims the entire way. So, you've told everyone you're gonna go hike, now you have to prepare for it. I spent about a year and a half preparing to spend 6 months on the trail. The big things are, of course, your body, your mind, and the gear. So as for physical conditioning, I did basically nothing. Because I had read that you're gonna go exercise for 6 months anyway. The best way to get ready for hiking every single day is to go hiking every single day. And I said, hey, I'm gonna go hiking every single day in Georgia. I'll just take it nice and slow and work my way up, and that worked for me. I will say if I ever did this again, I would do more physical conditioning, mostly because it lets you get to your maximum daily mileage right away, and it gets you over the hump of feeling sore as your body goes, what are you doing? Why are we doing this? What's going on? So there's that aspect of it. Preparing mentally is very important because the best way to not quit your through hike is to not quit. So you have to have a plan of what's gonna happen on the low days, because it is not pleasant for a majority of the days or close to that. What I did as one little thing is, while I was still excited and hopeful about all, like, oh, I'm gonna go do this thing, I wrote down why I wanted to do this, what I was hopeful for, what I wanted to get out of it, and I wrote down like motivating words because I knew I was going to feel low moments. So if I couldn't, in the moment on the trail, if I couldn't hike for myself, if I couldn't do it for me in the present, I'd have the notes of me in the past rooting me on, and I could do it for him. So that's just kind of some ways you have to mentally prepare for stuff like this. And then the fun thing is shopping for gear. So, name of the game is as little as possible, as light as possible, because there's no reward for doing it faster than anyone else. So if you hike 2,000 miles, would you rather have 50 pounds on your back or pounds on your back? Don't answer that, Paul. I know you'd say 50 to spite me. Paul's a good guy. So when I say as few items as possible, that's all the clothes I brought on the trail with me. So you'll see one set of hiking clothes, my top, my shorts, 2 sets of socks, base layer, smart wool, so that you can stay warm while you're sleeping, a puffy jacket so you can stay warm while you're upright but not moving, and a rain jacket for everything else. Pair of shoes, all those other good things, a nice blaze orange hat because it never hurts to be visible in the woods. I always told everyone it was really great because I knew if someone stopped to talk to me that they meant to do it because they could have ran off. And then you see a sleep system there. That's not the exact quilt and pillow I did take on there, but it's a sleep pad. It's important because the way heat transfers, your body wants to warm anything colder to it. So if you sleep on the ground, your body tries to warm the entire ground. If you sleep on a pad, your body just has to warm that pad. It makes for a blizzard night, and you're not sleeping on twigs. I did have a tent. It's not pictured here, but of course that's always a necessity. Quilt over a sleeping bag because what keeps a quilt warm if it's using feathers is the loft. If you're sleeping on the loft, there's no warmth there. So if you just cut out the bottom of it and don't have it, that's less ounces you have to carry. And that is how through hikers think. Ounces lead to pounds, pounds lead to pain. I know people who cut all of the tags off of all of their things so they can shave an ounce off of here. And then the other thing, this is my kitchen, newly remodeled. Yeah, so that's a stove, that's a little pot. You can cook ramen off that. I think I ate chicken ramen pack, little 50-cent things you have at the store every night. Yeah. This is a bear can. It means that only you get to eat your food. So there's 2 ways of keeping it, because you're out in the back country. It is the animal's home. We are visiting it, and as they say, to not be too morbid, a fed bear is a dead bear, and I did not want to be responsible for any dead bears. So your options are either put it in something bear-proof like this, or you can get a very light bag and put all your food in it, and then find a tree that's the right height, but not too tall that you can't throw a rock over it. It has the right angle so it doesn't get stuck in, and then that bag has to be 12 feet above the ground and 6 feet away from the tree and 6 feet below the tree. Or you can put everything into a box and punt it off into the woods and pick it up in the morning. So that's what I did. You'll note a water filter there. Water's all on the trail. You put it in a bottle, you squeeze it through the filter, you drink it. It's beautiful, it's magical. And just a little bit of gear there. Trekking poles really help take the pressure off of your legs. Since you're doing this for 6 months, every bit you can put up into your upper body makes the legs happy. And the other thing I'll point out is this little orange satellite receiver, which lets you send a GPS ping to your parents so they know that you haven't perished in the woods, and give them peace of mind that there is an SOS button that could call an emergency service should the worst happen. Other than that, we can finally go to the trail. We did everything. So, let me just check it out here. All right, beautiful. We're on a great pace. So Georgia is where I started. I did a traditional northbound hike because I was not skilled enough, I felt, to start in the challenging northern sections, and I did want a little bit of the community vibe, which needs to be where the people are. Georgia is 79 miles. I started slow. Slow is about 8 miles a day. So most people spend a week to 2 weeks in Georgia. Most people spend a week to 2 weeks in Georgia. 25% of people stop. Of the, like I said, on average, 2,500 to 3,000 people that attempt a northbound hike, the ATC, the governing body I'm going to mention a lot, averages that they think about 25% of people either don't finish or only do the Georgia section. They have prepared, they've let everyone know, they've quit their job or got leave for 6 months, they've gone out there, they spent a week in the woods and said, no! No! I don't want this. So yeah, but I mean, it's a good testament. You spend 2 weeks in the woods and you go, I'm gonna spend 5.5 more months doing this. Do I want to? I did, so that was fun. This is a view of Springer Mountain, the southern terminus. You will note at the very, very bottom, a white blaze. That is how the path is delineated, that you are on the correct trail. They're about every 100 yards or so along trail. That's how you know that you haven't wandered off the wrong spot. Also, because I did a great job of cropping this photo, at the very bottom you'll see kind of a coppery green plaque. That is the thing that indicates that, hey, you're here, you're starting. So I had a good time, you know, everything's like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's the honeymoon phase that they say, where you're like, everything hurts, but that's okay because I'm having fun still. And it rained a lot, it rained so much, but it was nice because I did have my cousin Jake came, spend time with me. He'd never done something of this magnitude, but he did spend a lot of vacation times going out to Glacier for a week of backpacking or out to Utah, that kind of thing. So it was really nice to have a friendly face and someone who knew what they were doing, because outside of a 2-day trip in the Kettle Moraine State Park, this was my first backpacking trip. So it was really great having someone there to like be a stabilizing force as I was like, huh, I'm sleeping in the woods for the first time. Everything sounds like a bear. Anyway, you make it through Georgia, you get to North Carolina, and you'll see this wonky mileage here, because about 100 miles in, you just ride the Tennessee border all the way until you're not in North Carolina anymore. A lovely view of the Smoky Mountain National Park. So this is a great point of, here's me at the border crossing for Georgia into North Carolina, and there's me at the 100-mile mark on a old fire tower you would stand up in, which this goes back to the mental aspect of staying in the game, is how do you find ways to reward yourself? Because if you think of it as, I have to hike 2,000 miles, that's daunting. If you think of just to the next state, just to the next 100 miles, that breaks it up, that gives you the little bit of like, yeah, I'm doing it. So that's a fun thing here. You can also see how much sunblock I was still applying to my face on the right. Eventually, the trees come in and give you sun protection, but in the early months, I started in February. Not that many trees. So move on to Tennessee. Tennessee and North Carolina are a couple because they just spent so much time together. That's me on Clingman's Dome, the highest point in the entire trail in Smoky Mountain National Park. And that's a view of me around like mile 300 just walking in rain for a week. That's kind of a point I tend to point out when I tell these stories, is I share a lot of the pretty photos. This is at least 50% of what this is just sludge, things where if you live at home, you'd be like, oh, let's not do this weekend, it's not gonna be good. There's not really, and not, thought that was me. That's not really an option up there. I also want to point out that this is a very smiley person who's also very cold. I spent 2 nights tenting in the Smoky Mountains where it got down to 17 degrees. So you'll see that I have a neck buff, I have my under my bedtime wool on, my jacket on, and another jacket underneath, and then a puffy jacket, which I would wear at night as well. So then you get to Virginia, and I really need you to look at this. 554 miles of the trail is in Virginia. A quarter of the trail is in Virginia. Remember how I said earlier where one of the things that motivates you is crossing to the next state? Virginia has the Virginia blues, which is a very common ailment hikers face, which is where they go, I'm still in Virginia. I've been walking 300 miles, and I'm still in Virginia. That's where I focused in more on, let's celebrate the 100-mile segments more. You find ways around it. You also find companionship that makes things going along. Like, I cannot stress enough, the community is what makes this trail. Oh, we need to talk about trail names. Because I'm about to introduce you to my very good friends, Rocket and Lucky Charm. Many people on the trail adopted a pseudonym, either of something they did on the trail. Paul, would you flip that sign backwards with the people behind? Yes. My trail name, if you were to find me on trail, I would respond to Soup or Good Soup. It's because of a television show where a character says, good soup, and I thought it was funny, and I said it too much, and so people just started calling me Good Soup. Anyway, so there's these 2 gentlemen that I hiked roughly Georgia with. I lost them a little bit in North Carolina, and then we reconnected to hike into Virginia. And that's the beauty of it. There's no goodbye on the trail. It's just see you down the trail. You might run into someone later. That's what an average tent site looks like. It was just kind of flat areas on the side. I'm the kind of green tent in the middle. And me and my buddies found a spot. More people came in, and suddenly people you'd never met would also hike as much as you. We're sitting around eating their ramen, eating their Slim Jims. I keep repeating those because that's what we ate. And just having a good old sense of community, which really alleviates the homesickness. There's also ponies, which also really helps with the mental health. Some of the highlights of wild ponies. You can see that the trail is right down here, so they get up close. Also, a quarter of the way through in Virginia, which is another way to keep them happy. I've got two stories. One is a story of how, even if you've hiked 500, 600 miles, you can still be a fool. I hiked past a water supply thinking there would be more water. I hiked 2 miles up a mountain and realized I was wrong. And my options were to hike 2 miles backwards, and I'm not a quitter. Or to hike 6 miles forward and camp on the shoulder in a parking lot outside of a general store and wait for them to open up at 7 a.m. so I could get water. So that's me using a stone picnic table to set up the rainfly on my tent. And then the other one of my favorite stories is that says, hiker warning, you're entering the roller coaster, which if memory serves correctly, is a particularly mean section of Virginia where there's, I believe, 14 hills in as many miles, if not less, where you just go up and then you go down, almost like a roller coaster. And I got into a shelter site where I was going to camp out, and I went, hey, I'm pretty close to getting to Harper's Ferry, which is a big deal because you can go check in at the headquarters and say, hey, I made it from Georgia. And another big thing is they take a Polaroid photo of you, they put it in their logs, and then you kind of get to live on as history on the trail there. I said, it's my birthday tomorrow. It'd be really cool if I could get my photo taken on my birthday. Let me check the map. I'm 30 miles from Harper's Ferry. The biggest mile I've done so far is like 25, which, as anyone who's done any sort of distance sport knows, each additional mile you add is harder and harder and harder. It's not just 5 more miles. And I said, yeah, that's a good birthday gift. So I went to bed at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I woke up at 1 a.m. I started hiking at 2 a.m. I finished the roller coaster by 10 a.m. And I kept going, and 30 miles later, the headquarters closed at 5 o'clock, and I rolled in at 4:45, having done 30 miles and finishing Virginia on my birthday. West Virginia, this is a much happier number. There's just 4 miles, and it's basically just Harper's Ferry and the area outside of it. But as I mentioned, it is a big deal because you're finally out of Virginia. The states start clicking along faster, and that is my official photo taken. I was the 295th northbound hiker to register with the Harper's Ferry office. You can see my wonderful penmanship, my name, my trail name, the way I was hiking Georgia to Maine, all that other stuff. And then, of course, my little note, I hiked 30 miles to get here on my birthday. Wonderful time. I took 2 days off after that. Maryland. So at this point, I'm averaging 20 miles a day as long as the trail is not particularly terrible. So Maryland took 2 days to hike, and that's Maryland. Some people do a 4-state challenge where they start in Virginia way early in the morning and they try to hike into the 4 miles of West Virginia through the 41 miles of Maryland to end in Pennsylvania, hence 4 states in 1 day. 30 was enough for me, I didn't need to do 40. Pennsylvania, where my heart is. Pennsylvania is lovingly known as Rocksylvania, as you can note by the photo on the right. That is what the trail is like for tens of miles at a time. You're just hopping on ankle twisters the entire way, or in above the tree line, just boiling on a rock. And you'll also note over here, that's not missed. If you recall from summer of last year, there was the wildfires in Canada. And so that's what it looked like on a particularly terrible day when we first realized, something's not right. You may remember there's that little bit of like particles per air thing.
Yes.
It got up into like 200. We're like, oh, we're in maroon, we're not good. We were up into about 350. So a little story about getting out of that in a second here. But it's also one of my favorite states I hiked in because my darling partner Abby, on the right there, and our roommate best friend Maggie came out and hiked 2 days with me. That's the halfway point, which is a special moment to share with them. The other special thing is once you hike halfway, you get to do the half-gallon challenge, where you try to eat half a gallon of ice cream as quickly as possible. There is a general store in a state park, and most hikers try to test their merit. It's actually just a little bit of, it's tradition, I gotta do it. So I got in, and I saw there was a sign, and it said the record for the fastest time this year was 5.5 minutes. And I said, I can see that. So what I did is I spent an hour melting ice cream in the sun. And for those who want to talk to me afterwards, because I wouldn't dare just blindly show it to you, I have a 3.5-minute clip of me chugging ice cream. And I walked back in, very full, and I said, I beat the record. And they said, did you melt the ice cream? I said, sure did. They said, that's not allowed. But a great story nonetheless. I tell you what though, if you're gonna consume a gallon of ice cream, melt it and get it out of the way. There was people there for an hour just bemoaning their lugs. So, but anyway, another bit of just how wonderful the trail community is. There was 7 people in this shelter, which happened, it was a interesting case because it was only like 0.2 of a mile off a major road, and there was a local pizzeria that, for an additional fee, would deliver pizzas out to you in the woods. So outside of 2 people in this photo, I met all of those folks there that day. We had signal there with our phones, and we said, huh, the sky is full of plague. Canada is lighting us up, so we need to get out of here. And we all stuck our thumbs out, and 2 different cars at the same time took 7 incredibly stinky hikers into town where we were able to get a hotel and spend the day waiting for the smog to die down. Which again is just a testament to the wonderful people on the trail. It's not just the people who maintain the trail, it's not just the people who hike the trail, it's the people who take care of both. And that term is a trail angel, someone who just blesses hikers. So I experienced this all the way throughout the trail, but especially Pennsylvania. Over here we have, oh, what were their names? I think it was Twizzler and Wobbly Girl. That's what their names were. And at 3 different points across 4 days in Pennsylvania, I'd come to a road crossing, the back of their minivan was open, and they had pre-portioned out packets of Twizzler, homemade banana bread, Gatorade, soda, water, and they're just like, you look like you could need this. And I said, yes, I could need this, thank you. So eventually on the 3rd time in 4 days, I'm like, I need a photo with you. This here is the basement of the parish of a church in Duncannon, Pennsylvania, and they will just let anyone, doors unlocked, you can come sleep on the floor. I think we had 16 people in there that night. They provide pancake mix, they provide ice cream, provide Gatorade, a shower, Epsom salt, and foot bath to soak your feet in, all at no charge. Of course, there's places where you can donate, of which I think I probably paid more to them than I paid for any hostel on the trip, just because I was absolutely gobsmacked by their generosity. I also had 2 different families, someone who found me on Instagram and someone who was a relation of a family friend who lived in the area, and both of them picked me up from the woods, took me to their house, let me get myself clean, gave me loaner clothes, and fed me enormous 4-portion home-cooked meals, and then brought me back out into the woods. Why? Because they wanted to. That's where I'll just kind of insert one of the great lessons I learned on the trail is that people want to help people who are helping themselves, and there's no one helping themselves like through hikers just getting across the trail, which is why I think this dynamic exists. They know that their generosity is not going to go to waste. So we make it through Pennsylvania, and we get to New Jersey. New Jersey is really great for food, 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 food. If you hike only on the official trail, you're a white blazer because you follow the white places on the tree. If you skip a section and you take an off non-official path, those trees are blue blaze. You take a blue blaze. And if you hit every deli in New Jersey, you're a deli blazer. I think we got in at 8 a.m. and they had chargers in a front deck out on this deli/general store. I think we spent 7 hours there and I ate 3 sandwiches. That is just another good point. Out in the woods, you're eating stuff that has shelf life. You're eating stuff that can survive being in your backpack in the sun for 4 days. So when you get into town, it's a special treat. And also, if you're hiking a marathon in the woods basically every single day, it's really not easy to be calorie neutral. You're typically running at a deficit. So you have to go into town and load up on food in your belly before you can throw it back on in your pack. Another fun thing about New Jersey is there's a drive-in theater that will let you set up your tent for $5. You can rent a radio and watch the movies on the screen. Which is another just point that even the towns around there know the hikers. They've kind of adapted to us stinky people walking through. New York is special. It's where the first segment of the trail was created, and you can tell because in contemporary or more new trail, there's more modern ways of managing nature. They put a lot of like switchbacks in because that way it's not a harder angle, your feet aren't tearing up the dirt as much, you preserve the trail. In New York, they said, here you are, here's the mountain, go straight up the mountain. So a lot of wheezing happening in New York for that fact. But also, my favorite section on the trail, there's just a part where you're walking down a little connector road from one part to the next, and I go, oh, there's cows, how cute. You keep walking closer, I'm like, oh, we're getting closer to those cows. And then I see that there is a little ladder over the fence marked with a white place, and you get to walk through a field of cows. That's also me celebrating crossing another state line, New Jersey on that side, New York on this side. And that's someone who hiked the trail with their dog. Had a blue heeler, I believe, who hiked 90% of the trail with them. We get to Connecticut. Connecticut, again, we see 50 miles. We say, let's divide that by 20. That's about 2.5, 3 days in Connecticut. So very short, very well-loved trails. My favorite part was the mountain laurel blooms were in full swing, and so it was miles and miles just caved in by these beautiful, fragrant flowers along the way. We then get to Massachusetts. Again, relatively short period. That's a photo of Mount Greylock, which is part of the official Appalachian Trail. You have to hike up to the highest point in New Hampshire, which is there. I had the great fortune of my dad being out there for that day, so I got to slack pack, which is a fun term I'm going to tell you, which is where someone says, let me hold all the stuff you don't need to do the hiking part, and then you can hike with 15 less pounds on your back. So he was able to help me out with that, which was great because everything was really, really rainy and muddy, and I would have fallen down many more times. Speaking of really, really rainy and muddy, Vermud. As it is lovely known, you may also remember from last summer that Vermont was in a state of emergency. They received such torrential rain that they had roads just washing out. There were sections of the trail where it was just waist-high water raging down. And I came back from an excursion back to Wisconsin the day after the state of emergency was put into effect, right there at the border. So again, I had my dad who had driven me back out there, and he slack packed me for the first day. And I was like, if I ever see something I can't cross, I will just hike my way back out to you, and we'll wait it out. And I didn't find a section I couldn't cross. And the next day, went out and I found 2 people that I had hiked around for a month in North Carolina. And we said, hey, you want to be buddy systems in case one of us gets swept away? We call the other people's parents. We said, yeah, sounds great. That's not what we said. That's not what we said. We said, if we find something we can't cross, we'll all back up together. But that led to a very interesting time in Vermont because the trail was so bad. At no point did they say, you can't be out here, don't be out here. They just said, make smart decisions. We have a bunch of resources going to other things. Hikers who chose to hike into the woods unnecessarily is not on our priority, which is why we said we wouldn't cross anything, we wouldn't want anyone else to cross. The other nice thing is, when you receive 8 inches of rain in one day, everything floods, but if you don't keep getting 8 inches of rain, the rainwater does just eventually flow off and sure the trail's messy, but there's no more impassable water sections. It did get so bad that the Appalachian Trail Conservancy said, hey, if you hike the trail, as you all know through hikers, you can say, hey, I hiked the trail. Please send me a certificate with my name and my trail name on it, and I'll feel good. They said, just so you know, this year, you don't have to do Vermont to claim that. If you skip Vermont, we will not hold it against you. But we didn't, and we had a great time because a lot of people were skipping Vermont, so there was more resources available to us, more camping sites, more means of getting in and out of town, that sort of thing. I'll point this out here. This is one of the unofficial shelters on the trail. That is just someone's cabin in the woods. There's no furniture in there. It's a wood floor, second double-decker. And they say, as long as we're not in here, anyone can come sleep in here. So it's one of the only shelters that has a fourth wall on it, which is really great. And you can even see the observatory on the top of it. That's where I took that next photo, just watching the clouds roll and ripple over the green mountains. So yeah, I send you photos of me in the rain. I also send you photos of me enjoying the bounty of nature. New Hampshire, the penultimate state. The thing that absolutely brutalized my body. New Hampshire has the White Mountains, which are absolutely gorgeous. I think you should all find a way out there sometime. It is the most elevation up and down, the most rock climbing part of the trail, and also because of how they choose to protect their space, the people that oversee this section, you can only camp in designated camp spots. You can't find a flat spot and camp there. So that really impacts how you hike, because you can't be like, I'm gonna shoot for here, and if I fall short, it's like, no. If you're here, you either have this option 4 miles away, or this option 12 miles away. And you know how I was telling everyone I was doing 20 miles a day? In New Hampshire, I was doing about 8, because that's just how tough it is. They also have the, oh, that's a good looking guy. Sorry. New Hampshire has the 4Ks, just all the peaks that are 4,000 feet above sea level. It's especially for those who live out in the area, it's a popular pastime or challenge to hit all of the 4K peaks. The trail happens to go through a bunch of them. I had stayed at a hostel the night before, and they let you slack pack the 6-ish miles from one parking lot up this peak, straight up the highest elevation part of the trail, and then back down the other way. And so you don't need your full backpack because they're carrying your stuff. And someone said, I bet you $5 you won't use the Troll's lunchbox. I was $5 richer. So that's why that's there on my. That's the Franconia Ridge. This is one of those things where I say it's really hard because I'm gonna walk over here. So just below this peak, on the other side of the mountain, there's a town. They don't build towns up on mountains, they build them in the valleys. So I hiked up to this peak that morning, said, I wanna tag some extra 4Ks, and of my own volition, hiked back over to this 4K peak, hiked back to here, hiked all the way up this ridge to a peak over here, down the valley, up to Garfield Peak, right here, where I took that photo. So that's what a day in the Whites is like. And that's why it was my slowest 100 miles of the entire trail besides the first 100. But also, it is just beautiful. I know everyone always says photos don't do things justice. The photos don't do things justice. The other issue with New Hampshire is that you're above tree line a lot of the time, so you have to be very, very cognizant of what is the weather like. Do I just need to stay in place, which adds an additional element of you typically only want to pack just maybe a half day's food more than what you need. The more food you carry unnecessarily, the more energy you have to output. That's hard here because you want to make sure you have extra food because there's no getting off this section. You start, you go to the end. We fortunately had pretty good weather, and there are huts along the way where you can spend like $3 to get a bowl of soup, and then people would be like, soup's drinking soup, and I'd be like, I'm tired. Mount Washington is the highest point in New England. And that's the group of people I met in Vermont. From that point, at the Massachusetts-Vermont border, the 3 of us there hiked all the way to the end together because we had a similar daily pace, which is the most important part about choosing trail friends. fence. And then we had a brilliant idea. We said, hey, we're smart, we've hiked this long, we know what we're doing. The official route off Mount Washington through Jefferson, through Adams, people cry about that all the time. It's terrible. What if we take a shortcut down the highest mountain in New England? So this is technically, well, it's not the Appalachian Trail, this is an official trail called the Great Gulf Trail. You start Mount Washington, you go into that gulf. And what we thought of when we saw this, we just looked at the logistics was, this shaves 3 miles off, yay, 3 miles less, and you get all the elevation out of it. There's no up and down, you just go down and then you're done with the elevation. You get all of the elevation from the highest mountain in New England done right away. If you've ever seen on like the sides of the roads where it's like, hey, semis, watch out, it's 7% grade here, it's 7%, it's 8%, watch out. There was about a 0.2 of a mile section where we were at 68% grade. So we got down, we got to the bottom, we said, is everyone alive? We said, yes. Okay, we are never doing this again. We can't tell our parents. I'm up, I guess. So that's us making our way downtown. And then you get to Maine, and the most common thing that happens, I shouldn't say most common, a very common thing that happens when you cross over into that Maine border is you get really, really sad. Not because the trail's ending, but because the entire way you've been hiking, everyone around you, the trail angels, the other hikers, the volunteers, the people in town are like, hey, you just gotta get to Maine, you just gotta get to Maine, you just gotta get to Maine. And then you get to Maine, and you still have 282 miles left to hike. Luckily, I had met someone in Massachusetts who were like, hey, fair warning, you're not getting to Maine, you're getting to Katahdin. You need to change that in your head, which did a lot of work. Speaking of Katahdin, that's a view of where it ends. The really special thing about Katahdin, while it's not the tallest in New England, it has, I believe, the largest prominence, which is, it just stands out. There's not a bunch of other tall stuff on it, so it's just this jut of rock in the middle of Baxter State Park. So, we cross the border, we adopt someone into our tramily. That's what you call the group of people you hike with, your trail family, your tramily. Her tramily members had a hard deadline and they had to really hike faster and faster. She said, I don't want to hike that fast. And we said, hey, we've been hiking around you since Georgia. We know who you are. Come on in. You see those boards there? Those boards are not there to protect the grass. They're there to protect you from the bogs that are underneath the grass. I had one moment where I stepped in. I'm a 6'1" person. I took one misstep, went, oops, and then I sunk down to my hip into the bog, and the bog went around me. This was also when I was on the side trail checking out a plane crash, and so while people knew where I was, knew where I were, grammar is a funny thing, they didn't know exactly where I was, so it's kind of been like, is this my story? And I pulled myself out of the bog. There's also the Mahoosuc Notch, which is a mile of this. It's just that, it's just boulder fields for a mile. And there's just little arrows where it's like, crawl in here, danger here. No. And also, my shoes. That was my third pair of shoes. Let's talk about gear. You don't get to the whole thing on one set of gear. So, I went through about 9 pairs of socks because these socks were the ones that worked for me. They are toe socks, they go around, so they stop the blistering. I've tried other socks, a different variety, and I just get blisters. So as long as only one toe on each foot is out, you still get blister protection. And then that's the same style of shoe. The one on the right is brand new out of the box. The one on the left I put on before I went into Vermont and took off when I got into Maine. So that's just Vermont and New Hampshire. And again, when I say New Hampshire was rough, that's what happened to my shoes. And not just my shoes, my shorts. That's not a fun raggedy romper. Those are my hiking shorts. I got 1,000 miles out of them before they just started to deteriorate. And so then I got another pair of shorts, and then they deteriorated, and then I was at a hostel, and I was wearing swim trunks from just the general grab bag of clothes, and I said, hey, owner of the hostel, can I pay you $10 for these swim trunks? And they said, yeah. So that's how I got my third and final pair of shorts. And again, the trail magical with about 150 miles left to go, a guy just rolls up into a parking lot where there's hikers, whips out his grill and his tent, starts making flapjacks, sausage, bacon, toast, candy bars. Do you need small bags of chips to put in your bags? The community is wonderful. We also have the Kennebec River, which is the only part of the trail where the official route is a canoe ferry. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a gentleman in the canoe. He's got a yellow paddle right on the edge there, and he can take 2 people at a time. You sign a waiver that you won't sue and fall in the river. And then he paddles you about 15 minutes across the river. If there is someone over there, he'll paddle them back 15 minutes across, all the way back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that was part of my other big mile day that I'm going to tell you about. 30 wasn't enough for me. So I had one day and we said, we're about 2 days from the last trail town. There's a very famous hostel, you can get a lot of food. It's like, if you're going to do the trail, you have to stop at Shaw's Hostel in Monson, Maine. You have to. We said, okay, we've been hearing about this the whole way. We're about 41 miles away via the trail. So that's 2 days of hiking, 20 days of hiking. By this point in Maine, it's getting easier than New Hampshire. And we said, but we'd love to have more time, because at this point we know when we need to finish. People have bought plane tickets back home, we have an end date. It'd be great if we had 2 days, but it's 40 miles away. But if we do this reroute of our own volition, because we had never learned our lesson about doing our own routes, through all the logging trails, not on the trail, it's only 36 miles. And if we do 36 miles in one day, we get 2 days at Shaw's Hostel. So we did that, which included the ferry across the river that day. By the time I was the 6th person in line, which means I was the 3rd canoe across, I got across the river at about 10 a.m. in the morning and hiked on through a route that we had invented that morning and taken screenshots on our map, but no real GPS of, yeah, you're on this, because it's not a real trail, it's a logging road. And so I rolled into the parking lot outside where the trail meets back up with our home route, where the hostel picks people up in the morning at 10 o'clock at night, having walked about 35 miles in one day. And I texted my friends, who I had cleared past at that point. They had gotten up slowly. They were like the 30th people in line for the canoe. I said, hey, I made it here. I'm gonna pass out. And so I made a tent just next to a random truck in the parking lot, and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, I was expecting them to be like, we only made it this far. We'll be in it, whatever. And what I instead got was, yeah, we made it, and that's the photo of my 3 friends that you had seen previously, camping without tents because they were too tired. They had gotten in at 3 in the morning. But then we got pancakes, so it was all worth it. There's river crossings in Maine. We did another of our own reroutes where we picked our own way. That's another thing. Hiking the Appalachian Trail. I probably did about 97, 98% of the official path. The rest were reroutes where we thought, for the sanity of not doing a dangerous section, for the sanity of this place is prettier, we chose our own way. I pride myself that I have a continuous footpath where if you could light up all of my footprints, they would all connect all the way up through, which is not necessarily 100% of the trail. So on that reroute, we were walking, someone from the hostel was going and meeting hikers at the trail inside to drop off food. They said, hey, you only carry half, 5 days worth of foods, we'll bring 5 days of food back out to you. And as we're walking out, they're like, you know you're not on the trail, right? We said, yep, we know. And they're like, you got a plan? We're like, yep. He's like, do you want more pancakes? And we said, yes. So that's us eating pancakes on that day. And then, how are we doing here? Oh, we're doing great. The thing about Maine is that it is where your hike comes to an end, which is a bittersweet moment. By the time I was getting ready to end, I was a bit sad that it was going to come to an end, but my body was weary. I missed my family, I missed my girlfriend, and I was ready to head home. And the thing that finally locks it in that you are going to stop hiking is when you see Katahdin for the first time about 4 days out, and then it gets a little closer, and it gets a little closer, and then it gets really closer, and then suddenly you're at the foot of Katahdin, and you get to go through basically every kind of style of dirt path, all the way up to every little the terrain. I wonder if they did it intentionally, that you've got start hiking up, and there's the stone slabs that volunteers have put into place, and there's just the crude stone rocks that Mother Nature has put into place, and you get to the rock climbing portion, and you get the part where you finally clear the lip above the tree line, and you know somewhere up in the haze is everything that you've been hiking for, and you know everything that behind you is why you were actually doing this. And you look up and you see the peak up in the mist, you turn around, know that you're in the sea of clouds, and you keep hiking forward across the tabletop until you find the sign. And you find someone who's being incredibly too loud on the mountain for how special of a place it is, and you say, hey, shh. You just start taking photos for me. And he says, sure. And then you just do what you do and you make one last climb to the top. And for the briefest of moments, you are the tallest person in Maine. And you sit there for another hour for your slightly slower friends to come up and hike with you. And then you go home. Now what? Then you come home, you stay in touch with your friends, you reconnect with your families and loved ones, you do a presentation at your hometown library, and you think about what the next big thing might be. So, yes, thank you all very much for coming out tonight. I see that I have the gift of gab, if you didn't notice. I think we have a little time for some questions, if anyone has any at the top of their head. Paul?
Two-parter. One, what were the ticks, mosquito situation laying down the trail? Like, did you need to bring along bug spray or deterrents?
So I went the route of spraying my clothing, my tent, and my belt, and my backpack with permethrin, which is highly effective at killing ticks. It lasts about, they say, 4 weeks, or I think 4 weeks and 10 washes, something like that. I read the bottle, I stated what the bottle said. And basically, it lasts in your clothing long enough for that period where if a tick crawls on it, it will just fall off and die, assuming that you reapply it enough. And then for the particularly heinous parts with bugs, I just bought off and I sprayed it on myself.
And then follow-up question, do you plan to do this again?
To do this again? Probably not. I got my fill. I would do another big hike again, but I had a perfect alignment of like, I'm not content with my current job. I live in Texas away from my family whom I miss. I happen to have the means of doing this. It was the perfect storm of, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it now, or I'm going to do it when I'm 60. And I was like, if something happens where something along the way, I have a health issue or something prevents me from doing it, I think I forgot to mention, I have Crohn's disease. It's currently in remission, which is why I was able to do this hike. So I do know that sometimes your body will just rob you of health. And I was like, if I miss this opportunity because I said, I'll just wait a little bit, I'm gonna beat myself up. So I went for it. So I think I need another perfect storm of this. Yeah.
How old were you?
Huh?
How old were you?
I started when I was 20, oh gosh, how old am I now? No. I turned 28, I turned 28 in 2 weeks. So that means that I was 26 when I started, had my 27th birthday in May on the trail. And that's the other thing. The common population are people in their 20s who don't have a career they're locked in, don't have a family keeping them back. I don't mean to say it like that, but you can't go spend 6 months in the woods if you've got triplets at home, you know, that kind of thing. And then those who are retired. The oldest person who ever successfully hiked the Appalachian Trail was a man named Nimble Will Nomad. He completed it when he was 87 years old. The youngest was 4. Yes. So since there are not mountains like this in Wisconsin, I did a lot of reading. The famous book people know is Bill Bryson's A Walk in the Woods. It's controversial in the thru hiking community because he doesn't do the whole thing. But I read that. I will say he does a very, very wonderful job of describing the nature and the history both natural and communal around it.
I was thinking, and I apologize, I don't remember the title of the book, but there is one book, a blind man and his guide dog hiked the through trail by themselves.
Yep.
That is an awesome book.
There's an excellent book there. There's also an excellent book, which I think is either here or through the shared library services, called Grandma Gatewoods Walk. She was the first woman, I believe, just in general, to do the hike.
She did 3 times.
3 times, all of them above, I believe the age of 67 was the first time. So it's a great read. Someone's done a wonderful biography on her. There's many, many people, able-bodied, unable-bodied. I knew a gentleman who, he attempted a through hike one year. He had a very unfortunate accident on the trail where he slipped while getting water and passed out with his leg in frigid temperatures. And unfortunately, they had to rescue him, and they did have to amputate that leg. And he said, I'm just gonna do it next year with a prosthetic. And he did. So yeah, there's a lot of stories of people overcoming things physically and mentally and socially out on this trail. It's a catalyst for pursuing the life that you want.
What about snakes?
Snakes. I did not see any dangerous snakes. Everyone around me did. You can extrapolate what you want from the information. I had one day where I had like, oh, what a lovely day. And someone said, we hiked past 3 copperheads today. And I said, I'll believe you.
You mentioned the 4-state thing that people try to do. There's another program that the Conservancy has where you do a day hike in all 14 states. And you get a little patch or whatever.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I did a through hike. There are so many other ways. That's just one small sliver of how you can enjoy the trail. They estimate that about 3 million visitors per year on the trail. So again, 3,000 people attempting the through hike, 3 million people that just come out for a day or a weekend or a week. Much like the trails we have around here, there's the Dorothy Carnes Park. There's the Ice Age Trail that runs through the state there, state here. You don't have to do the whole thing. You just gotta go do a part of it. Yes, in the back in the blue.
Can you compare the difficulty level of the AT to the IAT? I mean,
I would
just
say
a psych section or something.
Yeah, I did 2 days of the Kettle Moraine section, not Kettle Moraine, Whitewater section. I did 10 miles in. It is vastly more technically difficult, is the truth of it. I did encounter someone who hosted me in their home, and they were from Wisconsin. They had done a lot of big trails, including the Ice Age Trail, and having done the Pacific Crest Trail, Mexican border of California up to Canada through Washington, the AT, international trails, they said by and far the Ice Age Trail was the biggest logistical nightmare of any trail they encountered. And that is not a knock at the trail, that's simply because the other trails have a defined path through. The Ice Age Trail is a bunch of little sections all connected with roadwalks connecting between them. And there's no official route connecting the sections, you kind of have to pick your own way of walking the roads to connect them.
So logistically, a little follow-up. Logistically, it may be more difficult, but isn't it much more easy?
Physically, significantly easier is what I would assume. It is half the mile.
I don't want to scare these people away from the Ice Age.
No, significantly easier to do physically. It is less time. So where I did 2,200 miles in 6 months, I believe the Ice Age Trail, it has a little bit where you can go around Madison, pick your own way. So a through hike is about 1,000 miles. So half the distance, most people take about 7 to 8 weeks to do it. So half the distance, less than half the time to do so. And it's beautiful. The original concept behind it was that it would follow the terminal moraine of, terminal glacier of the last glacier that came through. So it's a really beautiful section of Wisconsin. Yes, right here.
Did you experience much wind on Mount Washington?
Mount Washington, I think you're aware of the fact Mount Washington is the fastest recorded wind of anywhere in the world.
Yes.
I think around 246 miles per hour. I did not experience it. I did stop just before the summit because it was going to snow that day. And to speak to the difference of people on the trail, me and my group said, hey, there's a little hut here that's just 2 miles below the summit. That summit is the worst weather. It's going to snow today. Let's just hunker down in here. And as we did that, another group of hikers quite literally kicked the door open and screamed, "Washington!" and sprinted up into the snowstorm. Mount Washington is also particularly dangerous, a place for those who aren't following the rules and safety. They quite freely have a poster you can buy where it's a list of everyone who has perished on the mountain and what they were doing when it happened.
Wow.
Which really puts into context when you're up there, like, maybe I'll go out today, and you see that poster and you go, I'm gonna stay in the hut. Yes?
You said you weren't really a hiker or camper before this, so do you think you are now?
Great question. I wasn't back before and I am now. Yes, I am. I also find that I'm kind of an all or nothing kind of person, and I'm trying to help myself be like, you don't have to go do 500 miles, you can go out for the weekend. I had a lovely bit of backpacking. I went down to southern Illinois for the eclipse, did some hiking around there, some backpacking around there. That is the beautiful thing of it. I started on the extreme end of it, but you can enjoy it in much shorter sections. It's crazy how when you realize, oh, the car is my backpack. I don't have to just carry this on my back. I can just throw a cooler of food in the car. It's an amazing feeling. Anyone else? In the very back there.
In 25 words or less, what did you learn?
I can do hard things. I can do hard things. People are what make the journey. Sometimes you don't need all the words. All right, yes.
Quick question, so did you say you started in February?
I started February 21st in Georgia.
Okay, and is that the most popular time to hike this? Is that when most people attempt because of the weather patterns along the way? or-
Great question. The most popular time is March. But the thing about it is everyone knows the most popular time to hike is March. So the start time is slowly with each year creeping further and further into February as people go, well, I want to do the most popular way, but not the very, very most popular. So I would say that there's the concept of the bubble of like, here's where the most hikers were. I started about 3 weeks before that, and then it slowly caught up with me as it went along. But yeah, I'd say March 1st is still the highest day for when people register and say they're going to start the trail. Whether they do that is another thing.
One last question, David.
Yes.
When is your book coming out?
Yeah.
The library would love it.
My book is coming out when I write it.
Okay.
All right. Thank
All
you
right,
all so
thank
much.
you again.